Now we have Chong Jiayi and Janice, both brilliant engineers with GovTech Singapore. Jiayi champions the development of GovTech's robotics stack. Prior to this, Jiayi worked in the Silicon Valley for close to 20 years. As the R&D technical director at Pixar, we've quite likely come across his work with Wall-E, Up, Toy Story. All excellent stories and awesome animation. Janice is with the Government Digital Services with GovTech. She has worked on various citizen-centric products, such as the Business Grants Portals and RSG Grants Portal. She was part of the pioneering team of Trace Together, one of the first Bluetooth contact tracing solutions deployed nationwide during COVID-19. Jiayi and Janice will shed light on innovation in the age of COVID-19, agility in the face of adversity. Over to you, Janice.
Hi everyone, my name is Janice, and today I'll be sharing with you about how we engineer trust in Trace Together. And I hope everyone is staying safe and taking care. So can I have my slides up, please? And next slide, please. So today, we just want to give you some background about contact tracing. We want to identify people who have been exposed to the COVID virus and to contact them to provide early detection as well as to cut the transmission chain. However, there are some limitations to manual contact tracing. For example, it is very limited to people and the context that a person is acquainted with and remember, and it's very high effort to be tracking down all these people and obtaining their contact numbers as well. So Trace Together seeks to supplement the contact tracing process in Singapore and address some of these limitations by trying to reduce the time to isolation and hence the effective reproduction number R. And we use Bluetooth because the virus cares about who you were with and not where you are. And it doesn't hurt also that Bluetooth uses a little less battery. Next slide, please. So just a quick introduction to Trace Together. It's a privacy-preserving contact tracing solution, and it's one of the first that is nationally deployed Bluetooth-based digital contact tracing. Next slide, please. And some people say, that sounds cool, but there'll always be people who ask, will the government know who I'm with all the time? Will malicious third parties be able to track me? So today, the question we want to ask is, how can we architect privacy-preserving contact tracing? Next slide, please. And I want to quote Stephen Covey here, he mentioned that change moves at the speed of trust. And from an interview that he did, he actually mentioned that trust always affects two measurable outcomes, speed and cost. And when trust goes down in a relationship or in a team or company, speed decreases with it, everything just takes longer. And here we can say that change can be analogous to innovation because with innovation, there will likely be some sort of change as well. Next slide, please. So creating tech for public good, what did we learn? Today, I'm going to share with you 4 pillars of trust, what we learned on this journey of building Trace Together. Next slide, please. And the first one we want to talk about is competency. And it's the assessment that you have the ability to do what you're doing or propose to do. Next slide. And in this journey of building Trace Together, I would say that we had a compelling vision that brought people together, that blurred the traditional organizational boundaries, a make it happen kind of attitude. And it didn't hurt that we actually have an in-house design and engineering capability, as well as interdisciplinary team and collaboration with people from the private and public sector. And all these can include, for example, on the right, you can see one of the images there is actually our device loan, largely on loan from all the major handset manufacturers. And we did all this by enlisting the help so that we can level up our knowledge of Bluetooth networking, physical radio transmissions, and cryptography. And it was also the use of Bluetooth, which has been around for 20 over years, and we use it for national digital contact tracing. Next slide. So the next one I want to share about is reliability. And it's the assessment that you make the commitments that you make and you keep your promises. Next slide. And here I want to share with you about the technical challenges we face in making the app work more reliably. Every device is a special snowflake, and different devices are transmitting at different RSSI transmission powers. So we had to calibrate the RSSI values from each device using data that we collected using a spectrum analyzer in an anechoic chamber. And usually GovTech, we use a lot of CI/CD automated testing, but it was very challenging to automate testing when you need to test Bluetooth signals between devices in specific positions relative with each other. Therefore, we ran a lot of trials to tune the algorithm to make sure that we were always trying to pick up the close contacts. Next slide. And the third pillar is sincerity. It's the assessment that you are honest, that you say what you mean and mean what you say. Your actions align with your words. And here, sincerity is all about intention. It's about ethical considerations in technology by design. Next slide. For that, we want to make sure that all our ethical considerations were the foremost in designing the protocol, and these are 4 pillars and principles that we use to architect a privacy-preserving protocol. And just to run through it very quickly, privacy-preserving is all consent-based, can be withdrawn anytime. We want to collect minimum data from the public, and we also ensure that only public health officials will have access to all the necessary data. And the last part is security by design as well. We have early involvement by cryptanalysts, as well as everything is open source. You know how we're doing all these Bluetooth exchanges, and it's very transparent. Next slide. And here is the part that I want to spend a bit longer to share about care. And it's the assessment that you have the other person's interest in mind, as well as your own when you make decisions and take actions. Next slide. For that, we have community-driven as well as user-centric design. We progressively added quite a few interesting features. The initial idea for Trace Together was for Bluetooth contact tracing, but we added safe entry features, exchange counters, user delights, even some gradient animations for users when they use the app to enjoy the entire experience. And we also wanted to have digital inclusivity, which meant that we have apps as well as tokens for people without the mobile phones, such as the elderly. And the last part was we conducted a couple of contests and earned media to raise awareness for this entire ecosystem. Next slide. Today, I want to dive a little deeper into the pillar of care, and I want to share this quote by Theodore Roosevelt, which is, people don't know how much you know, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And of the 4 assessments or pillars of trust, I would like to posit that care is in some ways the most important for building lasting trust. Now, what do I mean? When people believe that you are only concerned about yourself and not about them, maybe they will trust that, okay, you are quite sincere, you're quite competent, but they will tend to limit the trust of you to specific situations or transactions. On the other hand, when people believe that you hold their interest in mind, they'll be more likely to extend their trust more broadly to you. Next slide. So today we will say that organizations are networks of conversations. It is made up of people talking to each other and communicating with each other. And we can build trust through meaningful conversations. The pillars of trust we saw earlier are largely made out of assessments, which lead to people having different perceptions of trust. I may trust person A, whereas another person may find difficulty trusting person A because of some assessments. Therefore, conversations create a common ground for people to share and discuss what is important to them and what trust means to them in order to co-create ways of collaboration. So the question today we can ask is, how then might we facilitate conversations of care and trust? Next slide. And what we tried to do in Trace Together was by facilitating open conversations within the team and also with the public. Firstly, we open source our code. So OpenTrace created a platform for people to see what we did and to spark off discussions on how we could improve the entire ecosystem. And by open sourcing the app, we have also helped to drive transparency and therefore trust. Doesn't hurt that open source was also a way to engender sincerity. Everything that we did, you can see it online. And the second one that we did was that we had an informal chat platform on Telegram where people and members of the public can clarify doubts and we can get feedback from them on how to improve the app. And I believe that engineering engagement and product team engagement network in the heartlands is one of the keys to winning public trust. And the last one was also open conversations within the team. We had conversations of care within the team to develop a shared care of the team with a common vision and purpose. And we also tried as much as possible to have honest feedback for each other to really support one another, to say it's okay to make mistakes and spur each other on when things got tough. Next slide, please. And this whole journey of building Trace Together, the last part of my presentation, touches on the impact that Trace Together has had. Since its introduction, I would like to highlight that in terms of adoption, we have more than 50% adoption of the app in Singapore, and we've inspired other countries to launch similar apps as well. And lastly, we've reduced the average contact tracing time to much less than an hour, actually, with most of the time attributable to human response time. Next slide. So the next slide, I would like to just really end off by saying that trust is a willingness to be in a common space. And next slide, please. Is also in the common space that innovation can happen, and how we build Trace Together is one possible model of engagement between the government engineering teams, private sector, and the public. How then can we start to innovate or bring about change? Next slide. And I believe with the increasingly complex problems we are facing, we can no longer be effectively solved by one domain alone in a silo. We want to build bridges and not walls. And I believe that trust is the bridge that we can build to bring together policy, operations, technology, and the community in tackling all these problems. And it can be policy and the operation and technology teams to shape decisions and strategy. It can be the product and engineering engagement with the heartland people. So trust is the willingness to be in a common space, to be standing on the bridge and having open conversations about how each team can collaborate. Next slide, please. So I just want to let all of us, have sparked off some discussions and really reflect. Language creates, and it's through these conversations that creates possibilities. Are there missing conversations that of care and trust within your teams, your organizations, or even your personal lives that you can start to build as you collaborate with them? Next slide. Lastly, I would like to thank all our frontline medical workers who are really doing such a great job stopping the spread of COVID. And what we as engineers and designers do is really nothing compared to them. However, in GovTech, we have built a lot of products, as you can see in the feature here today, our portal, Supply Ally, Safe Entry, the GoWare family. It can be part of the solution as people are trying to elevate the load on the healthcare system. Last slide. And with that brings me to the end of the sharing. Hope it sparked off some reflections on how we might build trust between stakeholders. And I would like to thank all of our partners and stakeholders who have helped to make Trace Together happen. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jiayi. I'm code engineer with GovTech. Can I have my slides, please? All right, so today I'm going to talk about robotic dogs and smart sensors in the age of COVID-19. I hope it'll be an interesting slide. Thanks for joining us this evening. Next. All right, so I'm part of a group called the SNSP group, which is the Smart Nation Sensor Platform Group. And what we do is we deal with lots of data. So we get data, we sense it, and then we contextualize it by doing various kinds of analysis, increasingly these days with machine learning, and then finally we actuate on it. So that's where the value add actually is. Next. All right, so at SMSP, we actually collect data from everywhere. We call it a 360-degree sensor data bubble. So we don't distinguish between different various sensors. So there's your regular static sensors like smart lampposts, buildings, infrastructure, and then you have your mobile sensors. What we mean these days with mobile sensors are basically robots. So your legged robots, your wheeled robots, drones, and AUVs. And this all comes together in what we call a DOSS or a Smart Nation digital robotics stack. Next. Now, before I dive into the stack, I want to talk about how we process the data. Now, these days, obviously, with the world being very chaotic and very unstructured, one way to decipher the data is through machine learning, and especially deep learning. We're primarily a deep learning group because, as you know, deep neural networks have been proven to be very good insights into unstructured data because deep neural networks are very good at modeling nonlinear functions and all kinds of distributions. So we use lots of deep learning, and we deploy it at the edge. Next. Now, we're building this thing called the DOSS, or the Digital Operations Smart System Stack. And it's essentially a very advanced robotic and smart sensor stack that allows us to control various static and mobile sensors. One of the first mobile sensors that came into our group was obviously the Boston Dynamics Spot Mini robotics platform. And we built a whole bunch of capabilities on top of it. Next. The first capability we built is the Beyond Visual Line of Sight remote piloting stack, which actually allows us to pilot the robotic dog, or any robot for the matter, anywhere in Singapore over a secure 4G or 5G connection. Now, we actually deployed this at the Changi Exhibition Center, where the robotic dogs were piloted in a secure, safe space into the red zone, with the unsafe zone, to deliver critical medical supplies for patients and whatnot. So the nurses and doctors really appreciate that. And we also used it for safe distancing operations at various parks. You probably read that in the news. Next. So we also, can we play the video, please? Can you play the video? Thank you. So we're also developing robotics autonomy. Now, this is also something that's heavily in development in my group. We have obviously different kinds of autonomy stacks. The first one is your traditional LiDAR SLAM stack. So this is the LiDAR SLAM autonomy stack everybody knows. You go out, you collect point clouds, you slam the world, you make sure you have loop closure, and then you can basically navigate through a fixed series of waypoints. Now, we've actually obviously in-house developed this, all the algorithms. So we're modified in such a case that we can actually climb the stairs, go up and down in different kinds of rugged terrain. And also we've added capabilities for it to avoid humans, and also avoid any obstacles or construction sites. So it's also very safe. We've actually stress tested the system quite a bit. Now, the other system that we're also developing is actually a full-blown deep learning-based autonomy stack. So this does not require LiDAR, does not require GPS, does not require radar, doesn't require any of it. All it requires is a single camera. And so it's a complete vision-based autonomous system. where the robot essentially learns to navigate the world just like how a human would. And obviously, we leverage a whole ton of deep neural networks to accomplish what we're doing. And this is basically our own version of a self-driving car stack. Essentially, this is our self-driving robot. It's important to note that we've actually designed the system in such a way that the robots actually learn to navigate the world through high-level intentions, again, just like how a real person would. And we've successfully also autonomously piloted this stack over 2 kilometers in outdoors over a very unstructured, complicated terrain. So I think that's quite exciting for us to have developed. Now, the last capability that we have also developed is this human tracking stack, which is actually used for operations. So what allows you to do is have the robot actually track a person, even though there's a crowd, and actually follow the person through, say, a dark or dangerous alleyway. And this is actually very useful for different kinds of operations. Next. Now, once you have autonomous systems and control systems for robots, the next thing you want to do is have some kind of robust C2 system, which we also already have. Again, this is all developed completely in-house by me and my team. And this is a control system that's built on top of our robotic stack. So on the right, you can actually see a full-blown 3D real-time visualization of what the robot sees, the light up point clouds and what have you. You can plot waypoints, you can set navigational positions and motion planning, all that. And on the left, you can see what the robot sees from a first-person perspective. This is all done in real time, deployed on the edge with all the data streamed live, all the point clouds, everything, over just a regular 4G connection. And the processing is done in native C++ multi-core, multi-threaded code, and also a lot of the operations are offloaded to CUDA and the GPU. Next. So I mentioned before, we don't differentiate between mobile and static sensors. Spot-on is actually our static sensor, which also came out from our DOS operation stack. And this is actually also a deep learning-based smart AI thermal sensor. And what it allows you to do is actually mass detect a whole crowd of people, and give their temperatures per face. Now, it's not affected by mask, hats, or headdresses, and also not affected by cold items or hot items for that matter. It runs, again, in a very compact form factor on the edge on any low-end PC, all in real time. And this is actually an IP that GovTech is already licensed to commercial providers. So we're actually not just uplifting the public sector, but also providing, helping uplift SMEs as well. Next. Now, these are some videos from our initial development of spot-on system. You can see we have trained our own deep neural networks for mask detection, face detection, and you can even detect distances between people. I want to stress again, this is all done in real time on just a regular machine, nothing fancy. And we've optimized, spent a lot of time optimizing our code to make sure it all runs very smoothly. Next. So what's the future plans for DOS? Well, we have a robotic control system, we have autonomy, we have a lot of deep learning based systems for temperature detection and all that. But in the future, we're actually going to enhance spot-on with pulse detection, heartbeat detection, breathe rate detection, and importantly, scene understanding. So it can do a lot more for any kind of health monitoring. And for robotics, we're moving to wheeled robots, drones, submarines, and UAV. So I think there's some very exciting stuff that's coming down the pipe. Next. So that basically ends my speech and my presentation. Thank you so much for attending our talk. Thank you all.